So here I'm at the next step. I've got the table off of the saddle. And this is a pretty straightforward procedure. On each end of the table, there's going to be a kind of a thrust bearing assembly bolted to each end of the table. So this machine has actually got some ball bearings on each end of the table feed screw. So you take those off. There's a nice procedure. I've actually got the manual for this, which has an exploded parts view and you know, gives me all of the nice view of the parts and some nice procedure on how to take this machine apart. So that's nice. Even though machine tools, manual tools like this are pretty basic, there's not anything real complicated in them. Every little detail is usually done quite purposefully. So there may be non-standard specialty fasteners. There may be tapers to parts where you don't expect them. There's uniqueness to the way everything's fit together. It's the way these tools were made. And so you got to be a little careful. Even though they're basic, how you take them apart. You know, for instance, removing this feed screw the wrong way through the nut could damage the nut. I don't think that's true on this machine, but you know, this gib here, this is the gib that holds the, you know, that the table rides on, that sets the play on the tableways. You know, it's this long tapered gib. Well, there's two screws on each end of it. You can only remove the right side one. It tells you not to remove the one on the thin end, presumably to maintain the play that was set in the gib. So you don't have to reset the table when you go to put it back together. So there's just little details like that. You know, this machine obviously only comes apart to one side. Just the way it's built. So even though it's really basic, it's nice to have some procedures, some direction, especially from a manufacturer when you dig into here. If I were to damage any of these parts, I would be in a lot of trouble because they don't exist. And yeah, okay, you can make parts, but this would be a little bit of work to make, considering that this is my mill. So yeah, I'd have some problems there. So you know, just kind of a word of caution there. Even though these machines aren't that complicated, you know, take your time and try to you know, get as much information as you can before you dig into them. You also, when you get a table off like this, you get a chance to evaluate the lead screw and the nut. Now this one did not have very much play at all. It was very, very light. It was maybe a thousandth or so. I'm not kidding, like maybe one close to 2/1000 of lash in this. Whoops. Now, let's not do that. In the nut and in this at the worst point. So there is a little wear in this. You can actually kind of see it. You know, the table doesn't let this part of the screw go into the nut. So this is virgin thread here, and then there's, you know, this is worn all the way through the end here. Which is going to be typical of the nut. So that's kind of nice because the only way to replace this is to make them. Not going to find parts for a machine like this. It's probably the downside to a Gorton machine as opposed to something more common like a Bridgeport clone. The upside is once this table is slid off on this little machine, I can pick this up. This is probably 80 to 100 pounds of cast iron. And once you get the feed screw apart and out of here, the table just slides right off the saddle, and I just got a couple of little cheapo roller stands here that I slid it onto, and now I can pick this guy up and take it downstairs and get it out of here. The same thing with the saddle. The saddle will come off pretty much the same way. There's a assembly here with a thrust bearing, and that'll come apart. There's a feed nut right under this thing that drives the saddle back and forth, and I'll get that apart, and then I can get the saddle off. And the knee is going to have to come apart and be hoisted off the machine. That's a lot heavier. There's probably probably 400 pounds of, if not more, of cast iron on that knee. So again, this all is just getting mass off the base casting to make it easier to move. You don't have to necessarily do all of this. This doesn't have a very wide table. You could probably take the screw out so you don't damage it and lock the table down and leave it all together and move it in one piece. It's that much more weight. And I have to deal with going down, building a ramp and going downstairs. It's easier just to take everything apart, get as much weight off as possible, just deal with the base casting. And then when I do that, I can clean things up and evaluate it. And, you know, again, this is a really nice machine. This machine's it's obviously been used, but it's in really nice condition. You know, there's obviously, you can see in these scraped surfaces here, you can see there's some wear where the table rides, and I'm going to take a look at the backside of the table when I get that off as well. So it has been used, but there's still scraping visible here. So, you know, we're not totally clapped out, and I suspect this machine's still gonna be relatively in tram when I get it together, and will be just fine for my purposes. One nice thing is that this thing was bathed in oil. Everything is bathed in oil. It's fairly clean. They certainly didn't grease it or anything like that. So whoever had this machine, the previous owners, there's a lot of signs that it was well cared for. So that's a good thing. You know, usually when you're taking machines apart like this, and I have, you'll discover some nasty secrets in their history, and then you got to make some decisions whether you're going to live with them or fix them. But I don't have to deal with that here. So anyway, real basic, tables off the saddle. I'm going to go ahead and get that out of the way, and I'll start working on the saddle, and I'll keep moving along here. I just come out here and work at night the last few weeks. I haven't done much. It was crazy cold. And now it's almost 60 degrees, so welcome to winter in North Dakota. It's bizarre. Anyway, I'll keep moving on this, and my plan here by the end of this week is to actually start preparing to move this thing on this weekend. I'm going to line everything up and take the main casting downstairs and start reassembly. So anyway, I'll see you guys next time. So at the next step, got the saddle off of the knee. I got the knee hoisted up enough to get the screw apart for the knee, and kind of had to do this a little backwards. So down inside here on top of this gear, this is the mechanism that runs the nut that runs the knee up and down, and this nut on top of that gear is how you can take that whole assembly apart, and the screw and everything would drop out the bottom, the nut and everything would come out the bottom. But that uses a proprietary spanner wrench, and I put some dowel pins in the holes alongside of it and tried to get it loose, and I wasn't able to get enough torque on it. And I'm using this gear to drive it, and I don't want to break anything. So I tried, I gave it a good shove that way, and I couldn't get that nut loose. Without making a tool, I went ahead and left the nut in the knee, and that's all tied to this. So this is the nut here. This is the bearing that holds the knee. This is just a cover that slides up and down on there. But this guy here, I could get the knee up enough to get him out of the way. So I could get the screw out of the way, and then get this out of the way. And I just got to deal with this hanging down below the knee, which I can live with that. I can deal with that. This isn't as heavy as I thought. This piece here isn't too terrible. It's just really awkward. It's this kind of wedge-shaped piece of cast iron. It's got to be a couple 100 pounds. I think there's you know, maybe 3. probably 250, something like that. It's not anything you want to manhandle yourself. And this is the gib on this side, so I've taken everything except I've got one loose fastener here, just kind of holding it, because this whole assembly is just hanging there right now. So I'm gonna swing this guy out of the way. You can see I got my high quality cable come along, which you should never use to do what I'm doing here. Use a proper chain fall. The chain fall I had has a bad break, so here I am. But so that's kind of the setup here to get this off. So pretty basic. I can swing the knee out of the way. Can roll this whole casting back out of the way, and I should have no problem getting that off and getting it downstairs. You can see I got my the whole ram and head assembly there on a cart, and I'm gonna have to kind of make a skid for that. I'm gonna have to winch that down the stairs on the same track that I make for this thing. So my next step then is to jack this thing up, get some 4x bolted to the bottom of it, and that's what I'm actually going to use to slide this on my track down the stairs. And the only reason I'm doing that is, 4x are going to extend a little bit past each end, and it's just to keep this from tipping front to back as it's going down the stairs. This is all going to be tilted, right? It's going to be tilted going down the stairs. Wrong way. It's going to be like that, right? It's going to be tilted going down the stairs, and I don't want this front edge to catch and it to rock forward. So I'm going to put some boards on the bottom so it has to slide. And that'll also help me when I get to the bottom of the stairs. I'm going to have to slide it onto a level platform. It's going to come down the stairs, and I'm going to have to slide it. So anyway, that's kind of the plan to get this thing down there. So next step, I'm going to be skidding this thing up and getting ready to move it. So